From Idaho's News Channel 7, this is Viewpoint.
Welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Doug Petcash. Rapid population growth has impacted the Treasure Valley in many ways over the last several years, increasing traffic, affecting home prices, and stretching city and county services, to name a few. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the population of Boise grew by nearly 32,000 people over the last 11 years, from nearly 206,000 in 2010 to more than 237,000 in July of 2021. The challenge for city leaders in managing that growth is how to do it appropriately to meet the needs of the people while preserving the essential character of the city. The city of Boise has a new person in charge of leading that effort. Tim Keane became the city's Planning and Development Services Director in March. Mayor Lauren McLean selected him after a nationwide search. Keane has served as the Chief Planning Executive for Davidson, North Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, and most recently, Atlanta, Georgia. Mayor McLean said Tim Keane brings visionary leadership and a depth of experience that will help him guide our city's development as we grow, protecting what makes us unique and helping ensure we are a resilient and vibrant city for everyone. A tall task laid out in a one-sentence vision statement. Today, we're going to have the chance to hear Tim Keane's vision for the city of Boise, his approach to realizing that vision, and his priorities in his new position. My guest today is new Boise Planning and Development Services Director, Tim Keane. Tim, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Very much appreciate your time here. So I'm curious, after working in the big city of Atlanta, why was Boise the right fit for you for this position?
Well, I was in Atlanta for 7 years, and I went to Atlanta because it's a city with such enormous problems when it comes to planning. It's not a city known for planning. Of course, I've been in Charleston, South Carolina for many years. Historic city, smaller city, beautiful city on the coast, and decided it would be interesting to try to deal with a city with problems like Atlanta's, and a place that, you know, has really gone through its formative period many decades ago. And when I decided to leave, I really wanted to get to a place where it was in its formative period, where there was shaping to be done, and a place that's growing, and a place where there was a real connection between the city, the urban part of the place, and nature. And so I came here for the first time in January of this year, and you know, kind of fell in love with it in terms of the possibilities when it comes to shaping this place as it grows, and really avoiding the mistakes of so many cities in this country, including Atlanta.
And I believe in other interviews I've seen that you've done, that you talk about kind of the over highwaying in a way of the city, where there's so many roads and highways there that kind of deters from everything else.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the pattern of development in American cities, it's very similar. And the pattern itself, how we grow, the physical pattern that cities have grown, really for a generation, has created all the problems that we're all struggling to address today. There was a great column that Paul Krugman wrote a few years ago after Hurricane Harvey in Houston. The title of it was, "Why Can't We Get Cities Right in This Country?" And it really has to do with that. How we physically grow is what affects, you know, these issues that we all grapple with, like traffic and transportation. And when it comes to that, the way we've occupied the land and our expectations about how we'll get around has created this environment of everything being a highway. I mean, Atlanta's a great case. You know, Atlanta made almost every street a highway. You know, they got big highways, they got medium-sized highways, they got little highways. I mean, everything became a highway, and we need to avoid that, and we can in Boise as Boise grows.
And I want to bring up the quote from the mayor again, that one sentence that she says that, you know, your experience will help guide the city's development as we grow, protecting what makes us unique and helping ensure we are a resilient and vibrant city for everyone. So, you know, in your time here so far, what do you think makes us unique, and how do you protect it?
Well, you know, I still have a lot to learn. I mean, I've been here since March, and so I still have a lot to learn about the city just physically. I mean, I've been to many parts of the city, but I still have a lot to learn. I have a lot to learn about the culture here and how it's different than other places. So I don't at all presume to say I get it, I understand it, I have some vision for the city. I don't. I'm talking to people and learning about the city, and I want to understand what does make it unique, and how does that affect how we plan for the city's growth. So I'm really in the process of understanding the place, and I know this, we all here in the city, no matter your perspective on growth, and really whether you're in the city or not, whether you're in some other part of the region, in order to address the issues that we're facing, we're going to have to work together in ways that most cities haven't, and so I'm hoping, and every time I speak to people here, that everybody can be open-minded about what the solutions might be related to the things they're so concerned about.
So it's still in that formative stage.
I'm absolutely in that formative period. I mean, the time I came here, I had a chance, as I was going through the process with the mayor, meeting her and her team and people within the community, and you could sense quickly, the importance that people placed on how we grow, that we want to be very particular about this. And the issue is sometimes to do it well is kind of counterintuitive. You have to do some things that maybe you weren't thinking, because we've become so used to this inevitability as to the way the city will grow. And I feel like we need to challenge that, and we've got to do it together again. And I think one thing I can help with is that I've seen a city that went through this period many decades ago and made some decisions that I think were unfortunate. And so I can help in terms of understanding the implications of the decisions we're making right now during this formative period in Boise's history.
In Boise, cities, it's so important for them to have that character, and the essence of what they are. Boise has the unique neighborhoods of the Bench and the North End and Southeast Boise, and they're distinct. And so, how important is it in your philosophy or your mindset to make sure that that character of those neighborhoods is preserved?
To me, that's fundamentally important, and we're talking about that right now in the context of the new zoning ordinance that the city's creating. The city's been working on this for a while. I came into kind of towards the tail end of it. But when I got here, I said, this is what we must concentrate on. To date, I would characterize much of the work that had been done, and this isn't anybody's fault. I think maybe it was just a little bit of lack of leadership in the planning department, was that the proposals were very generic. In terms of zoning is what, of course, regulates the development of land in the city. It's a very important part of what the planning department does. And where the city had been headed was towards some very generic regulations. It didn't have much to do with that uniqueness of the neighborhoods that you're speaking to. So we've really shifted and said, hey, let's embrace the difference in our neighborhoods, and let's tie the zoning to the unique physical circumstances of Boise, not generic proposals, but ones that really have to do with this place. So we're really headed in that direction. I think the point you're making is fundamental to this place being distinctive and not generic like has happened in many other places.
Yeah. And so what do you think is, the key in getting it right for the zoning? When you talk about specifics, is it parking? Is it population density per mile? Or how do you look at that?
From a zoning perspective, it really has to do with, again, we want to, through the zoning, address the big issues we have, like housing affordability, mobility, transportation in the city, issues related to conservation and how nature is protected, that the zoning ordinance is touching those critical issues for Boise. So that has to do with things like that we're very particular about how the city gets denser and where it gets denser. That kind of stuff is tied to our transportation goals and the fact that more and more people in the city should have to drive less. So how you situate density and different housing types will either further that or work against it. So we've got to, and we're doing that in Boise's case, and everyone will see in the zoning proposals we're making that we're addressing those issues, but also that that we don't destroy nature in the process. And this is something Boise's worked on.
Green space is very important to Boise.
Green space, and the city's been working for many, many years successfully on things like the foothills protection and of course the green belt that was created. So there's been an enormous effort within this community to protect nature, and we have to keep going. You know, we're not done there.
I have a question about that too, because I think when people think about population density, they think about a bunch of people packed into a small area and then having to deal with that closeness. But having, you know, density spreading out farther and maybe being lighter density, but in a larger geographic area, how much of a challenge is that when you start talking about services that have to reach them?
You're hitting on one of the issues that, again, I'm hoping we can be open-minded about addressing. Because if you look at most cities in this country, as those places have grown, the tendency has been for the regional population to go up dramatically. Atlanta's a case like this. Salt Lake City's a case like this, where the regional population grows dramatically, the cities does not. It's static. And so that tells you a lot about the place. They've, as you said, spread out across nature and the landscape and farmland and desert and wherever you can build at very low densities, rather than the city getting denser appropriately as that growth happens, and the city taking a huge share of that population. I mean, I feel strongly, having even been here for 4 months, in terms of the regional growth that's going to happen here, it would be extremely helpful to Boise and the region if much of that development happened in the city. And the city got denser in the right places so that people could get around in different ways, so that we could protect nature and not just keep developing at low densities across the landscape, whether it's farmland or desert. But again, if this was a simple task, then others would have done it. New York Times did a great story recently about Salt Lake City and the challenges they're facing around the Great Salt Lake drying up. And really it had to do with the pattern of development, which has changed the relationship between the mountains and the lake and interrupted what was a natural condition that has to do with water in that place. And we just have to, we can't be the last city in America to follow the same pattern. And I don't think people here want to. I think they're just struggling with how do we do this. And that's why I hope that my time here can be very beneficial to the city.
Tim, we're going to take a quick break right now, and when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Boise's new Planning and Development Director, Tim Keane. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Viewpoint. Today we're talking growth, planning, and development with the City of Boise's new Planning and Development Services Director. He is Tim Keane. And Tim, you know, you talked about working together to solve these problems, but you must hear viewpoints from a bunch of different directions, and some of them being, can you stop growth?
Yeah.
Is growth inevitable?
Well, I think the growth is good, actually. So I'm, you know, whether it's inevitable or not, we're lucky to have the growth that we're having. I mean, the issues related to growth are challenging, and they require us to think differently and come to different solutions. But honestly, they're better than the ones that we'd be facing if we weren't growing. You know, and so I feel like we need to, and the planning departments in the city is substantially responsible for this. We need to take this conversation where it should be, which is how can we ensure that we are taking this growth that's happening and using it as a mechanism to create a better city that is addressing these big issues like housing affordability and mobility and so forth, conservation. We can do that. It's not that we can't do it. We can. It's just that so far the discussion's just been about everything related to growth just makes my life worse. You know, traffic gets worse. You know, I lost my view that I used to have, whatever it is. You know, I mean, there's all these negatives, but part of the process that we're going to be going through over the next 6 months to a year is getting specific about what is the city that we're trying to build physically. Get specific about it, not general statements, but very specific about what size city are we seeking to build and how physically could we accommodate it such that people can see the solutions to these problems in that city. So I think growth is a beautiful thing for us if we can get to the point where we can use it as a way to shape the city in the image that we'd like it to be.
And your jurisdiction obviously is within the city limits.
Right.
But how important is it that there is that collaboration across boundary lines to plan for growth. There are the regional organizations that bring the city's leadership together to talk about these things.
I mean, it's fundamentally important. Again, one of those things that we're discussing, we're getting to the main topics here, and you're hitting on another one that is essential because for many reasons, but you think about the public investments we make and how people live and get around, for instance. Those have to do with decisions not just the city of Boise is making, but that the counties are making, Ada and Canyon County, for instance, and others. All the jurisdictions, Meridian, Cuna, Nampa, and so forth, Caldwell. So it's, and it has to do with how we use the land, the decisions we're making about the protection of farmland and desert and other places, how we're enabling throughout the region for people to live in the different ways that they want to. And we were just talking about the fact that there's so many apartments under construction in every jurisdiction in the region. We just have to use these opportunities to take density and so forth and put it in the right places so that people don't have to drive everywhere and exacerbate our transportation problems. Another issue that we have to work so closely on is our streets. And you know, it's again counterintuitive in some ways, but part of the decisions we make about our streets, even in a place like downtown Boise, are directly tied to our ability to protect nature at the edges of the city. I mean, because when you're investing in streets in downtown Boise in a certain way and making them for people and making them beautiful, then you're unlocking even more potential for downtown, which takes pressure off the edge and nature outside the city. So there's such an interconnectedness to all these decisions we make. So I'm open-minded. Let's work together on these things and try to address what every people in every part of this region understand is essential about protecting what makes this place unique.
And we just have about 30 seconds left. You mentioned the big challenges and also just one of the opportunities about within the city, but what do you see as the biggest opportunity that comes with growth?
Well, again, I think the opportunity is for the city to become more distinctive within the context of what people associate with the identity of this place. If we keep pushing growth away, we're going to create the same situation that so many cities have. If we embrace it, then we can have a bigger city that is one that people in Boise recognize.
Tim Keane, thank you so much for your time today. It's good to get to know you and hear about your philosophy and everything, and introduce you also to more people here who may not have had a chance to hear those things as well. So thank you for your time today. I appreciate it, and best wishes on the vision and the mission that you are taking on.
I greatly appreciate it.
Well, speaking of growth, it is nothing new in our area. In fact, growth more than a century ago played a key role in the name of a well-known Treasure Valley road. Up next on Viewpoint, the story behind Ustick, the road, and the community. Time, water, and growth all come together to tell this next story. You've likely seen or driven on Ustick Road. It stretches 40 miles from Curtis Road in Boise, mostly straight to the Snake River. And as News Channel 7's Brian Holmes shows us, Ustick was actually once on a timeline to become its own independent community until time and growth got in the way.
Water, like time, can roll by undeterred, only altered sometimes by the path in front of it. A change in direction can change a lot. Water is what made the Treasure Valley productive and livable, and led to communities popping up all over.
If you're in a barren landscape, the next obvious thing is you need to find access to water.
In the 1870s, a canal system began to take shape, a series of ditches to take river water where it wasn't. Think the New York, Reidenbach, and settlers.
And by 1891, there were nearly 50 miles of canals that brought Boise River water as far west as Nampa.
Which meant homesteads and farms sprouting in spots south and west of the river.
We have Boise, who, central location, and we have a town of Meridian that had started to grow in 1893. And this Ustick property sat kind of in between the two.
160 acres claimed by Jacob Clemens in 1894, who filled them with orchards.
Anytime you have a product, you have to have a way to bring that product to market.
Back then, that meant investing in railroads.
And so the Boise Interurban Railway had a loop that took people and goods from Boise along State Street to Collister and to a number of points, and then back down along what we consider Ustick Road, back down into downtown Boise.
One of those investors of the Interurban Railway was a gentleman named Dr. Harlan P. Ustick. That's him in the top hat at the Golden Spike ceremony.
So this is where this name, Ustick, comes into the picture.
An ear, nose, and throat doctor from Ohio, Ustick also had an eye for business. And he had visions of building a town. So Ustick acquired some of Clemens' acres and laid out his plans and the plats by 1907.
So what we're looking at is the original plat of the Ustick town site.
And people were buying into Ustick's idea.
We clearly see the Boise Valley Railway line following this route.
You got a train track that runs through, you got water, now you got people interested in buying there. What came next?
And so he ended up opening a bank, and he served as president of a bank in town.
However, Ustick wasn't much of a banker, and it closed after just 3 years.
But they were also able to secure a mercantile store.
And even the orchards found success in the form of a cider house.
There was a Baptist church that opened and built a building. There was a Ustick school, and it really did operate as a true individual community.
A community that was cut short, much like Dr. Ustick himself.
And in 1917, he was visiting some of his mining interests in Yellow Pine, and he died of a heart attack.
After that, nothing could stop the life being squeezed from his town.
By 1918, we're in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, and we're in the middle of World War I, and things are changing. And interurban railways are no longer as critical because automobiles have become the primary mode of transportation. Boise is growing, Meridian is growing.
And becoming actual cities, while Ustick tried to stick with its roots.
And Ustick never elevated to that level, in part because they always were rural. They always maintained that rural profile, and they never let that go. Eventually, those orchards became subdivisions, and eventually the city of Boise annexed those subdivisions into city limits.
That was in 1995. Nearly 30 years after, you can still see some of what Ustick envisioned more than 115 years ago.
The original bank building and the original mercantile building are still standing.
And so are the consequences of change.
Change happens all the time, but change also leaves breadcrumbs. And if we can take the time to watch for that change and to see what has been left behind, there's always a story that we can learn from that.
And a fascinating story it is. The town of Ustick lasted 50 years, 40 years after its founder's death, with the post office being shut down in 1958. The school stopped teaching kids a year later. Residents once tried to get those few remaining buildings listed on the National Register of Historic Places, but only the school was added back in 1982. And there you have it, the story of Ustick. And that's all of our time for this week's Viewpoint. I'm Doug Petcash. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.